Hello and welcome to the last presentation of the semester. Woohoo, we made it! So we'll be exploring the freshwater, estuarine, and saltwater ecosystems that we visited. First up, we'll be starting with the springs. So here we have salt marsh morning glory, or Ipomoea sagittata. And now this is a perennial vine. It has 5 fused pink petals, and it has sagittate or arrowhead-shaped leaves, which told me that it was morning glory. And a fun fact is that, like other morning glories, these bloom in the morning and they'll wilt by the afternoon, which is where they get their name from. Now here is water pennywort, or hydrocotyle species. So they have circular leaves with blunted teeth-like margins, and there's a couple of different species that this could be. It could be hydrocotyle embellata, which has circular leaves, but hydrocotyle ranunculoides has notches or cuts in their leaves that go almost to the center, and these photos weren't clear enough that I was able to differentiate the species. But a fun fact is that different ducks and geese and other waterfowl will sometimes eat the seeds of this plant. And here is water pospilum, or Pospilum repens. So these have long lance-shaped leaves with narrow branches that come out of the main axis with spikelets on the undersides. They are C4 plants, which if you ever took ecology with Dr. Clouden, you would know that means they have a different mechanism for photosynthesis than the typical plant. Next up is muscadine grape, or Vitis rotundifolia. They have woody stems that grow upwards and cordate-shaped leaves that have toothed margins. And muscadine is dioecious, which means that only the female vines will produce fruit since they have a male and a female plant. And as you can clearly tell from my very well taken photo, here we have the Florida manatee, or Trichechus manatus latirostris. So this is a large gray-colored mammal that has paddle-shaped flippers and a tail, and they're often found in the springs. But they aren't able to actually turn their heads sideways. They can, however, reach speeds of up to 15 miles per hour when they're swimming, and for comparison, the average human can swim about 2 miles per hour. That's a little horrifying. This is blue tilapia, or Oreochromis aureus. They have a caudal fin that has a slight red tint to it, spiny dorsal fins that join with a soft dorsal fin, and pointed, slightly upturned heads. And moms will engage in mouth brooding, where the young are born in her mouth and then will sometimes return there whenever they feel threatened. Here we have some kind of cooter or pseudomys species. So it is likely a Florida or a river cooter, but due to the ripples in the photo, I wasn't able to distinguish the pattern that was on the shell. But those are the ones that it would likely be, just based on their range and the general shape and size of this individual. But their diets will generally change as they age, and they'll usually go from a more carnivorous diet when they're young to herbivores as adults. And last but not least, for the springs, we have a striped mullet, or Mugelcephalus. They have spots on the upper scales, a very elongated body with short pectoral fins and a lightly forked tail. And they are considered catadromous, meaning that they are born in saltwater, but they spend the rest of their lives in freshwater. Next up is our river ecosystem. The first plant in this ecosystem is water hyacinth, or Ecornia chrysipes. So this has leaves arranged in rosettes with a bulb-like shape near the base, and the plant is typically found in freshwater environments, which told me that it was likely the water hyacinth. And they are actually an invasive plant that will form thick mats on the water, and this can prevent oxygen from reaching the water, and it'll overall decrease the dissolved oxygen levels in the water. Here we have some kind of smilax species, so I was stuck between earleaf greenbrier and saw greenbrier because both have fiddle-shaped leaves like what we see here, and I wasn't able to spot any thorns or other distinguishing characteristics, which is why I'm not able to differentiate between the two. But I have nothing to say. I don't like this genus very much. I don't think it should exist. Moving on. So here is climbing hemp vine, or Mecania scandens. So they have small white flowers that are clustered in panicles with opposite heart-shaped leaves, and this plant is actually the larval host for the little meadowlark butterfly. Here is sweet gum or liquid dunbar styraciflua. So as you can see from the pictures, they have simple 5 to 7 lobed leaves and woody, spiny, hanging fruits, and based on the time that we were able to go, it looks quite red, which is pretty cool. But these trees are actually able to live for over 150 years. This is creeping primrose willow or Ludwigia repens. So they have small, opposite leaves with a green-red coloration, and they are found in freshwater ecosystems. And since this plant helps stabilize shores, they're found in both the shore and the water. It is sometimes planted for wetland restoration projects. This is the moonflower or Ipomea repens. So they have a large white flower with 4 to 5 fused petals and large alternate dark green leaves, and its seeds are somewhat toxic for humans and dogs, but eagle-eyed viewers will notice that it has the same genus as the salt marsh morning glory that was mentioned earlier. Here we have phasey bean or Macrotilium latheroides. They have short red-purple petals with dark green seed pods, and they have been introduced in Florida. They are not native, and they are considered pests in rice crops. Next we have the northern cardinal or Cardinalis cardinalis, and so I was not able to see the bird, but I was able to hear its calls, so I'll play that for you now. So they make chirping sounds that sound like cheer, cheer, cheer over and over again. And they actually have at least 16 different calls, and they use them to warn others about predators nearby, to be territorial, or when they're trying to kick their nestlings out of the nest. And here is the North American river otter, or Lutra canadensis. So today was not a very good day for actually seeing the animals, and instead just seeing evidence of them being there, but these are small little holes or burrows that otters tend to make on the sides of riverbanks. But they have thick fur and oily skin, which helps them to dry off really quickly whenever they exit the water. And lastly, we have channeled apple snail or Pomacia canaliculata, but they have a dark brown striped right-handed shell with a lighter brown operculum, which is the inner part once it opens the shell. But in Southeast Asia, they are often used as a food item, and they are exported internationally for use in gourmet restaurants as well. Next up, we'll be looking at our marine ecosystem or our beach ecosystem. First up for our plants, we have Juba's bush or Irisine diffusa, and so they have simple opposite leaves with clusters of small white-yellow flowers that we can see and pink stems, and these plants mainly reproduce through vegetative propagation, which means that they use other parts of the plant like the stems or the roots to be removed, and they can be planted to produce another individual. Next up was one of my favorites. It's spotted horsemint or Monarda punctata, and so they have tubular yellow-white flowers with purple spots and pink leaves above and below the flower, and they have been used to treat ringworm and hookworm due to their antimicrobial, antifungal, and antiseptic properties. Here we have painted leaf or Euphorbia cyanthifora. It has petiolate leaves with a red base that extends into green clustered flowers at the top of the stem, and they occur in a variety of habitats in Florida, and they produce a milky looking sap that is toxic and can cause skin irritation. Next we have ash juniper or Juniperus asci, because I guess they just decided they got it right the first time with the Latin name, but they have simple scale-like leaves with blue berries and shaggy or rough bark, and they're often found on sandy soils, and since the bark peels off in long strips, birds will often use it for nesting material. Next up we have partridge pea or Chamaecrista fasciculata, and so they are typically found in beach dunes and have yellow petals with a red spot at the base of each petal, along with purplish anthers in the center, and they are actually a nitrogen-fixing plant, which means that they're really good for the soil. Here is large leaf pennywort or Hydrocotyle bonariensis, and so they have circular leaves with scalloped margins and a distinctive stem in the center of the leaf, and they are edible and often used in cooking recipes. Next we have blanket flower or Gaillardia pulchella, and they also occur in coastal dunes, They have flower petals with an inner coloring of red that becomes yellow towards the edges, with lanceolate pubescent leaves. And this flower was declared non-native to Florida in 2020, which caused a small outrage in the native gardening community because a lot of people were really happy to plant this in their gardens as a native plant. And just a couple more plants to throw your way. We have camphorweed or Heterotheca subaxillaris, as well as earleaf greenbrier or Smilax auriculata, even though I still don't like Smilax. And now here we have a treat with a 2-for-1 deal. But we have narrow leaf yellow tops or Flavaria linearis. So this plant has small bright yellow flowers arranged in clusters with reddish stems. And then on top we have a horsepaper wasp that's doing a really good job of camouflaging, or Polistes major. But they have yellow and red stripes with a distinctive red spot on the back. Here we have our mourning dove or Zenaida macrura. And so it has a light brown color with black spots on the wings, and it makes a noise that many people mistake for an owl, but they actually have a sharp whistling sound that comes from their wings whenever they take off, and that can be used to warn other doves in the area to also leave. And here we have a ruddy turnstone or Arenaria interpris, and so they have speckled white and brown wings and back, as well as a short black beak, orange legs, and a white belly. And so as young, they'll migrate thousands of miles only 2 days after their first flight. And if you see in this picture, he does look like he has one leg because this individual did only have one leg. And so I do have a video of that in the next slide of him hopping around. But he was found with a bunch of other turnstones, so he's probably doing just fine. Here we have a laughing gull or Luciphaeus articula, and they have light gray wings with a black tail and white spots, a white chest and underside with black legs, and just generally fun and unnerving energy. But the males and females will build their nests together. And lastly, getting into the shells, which I'm sure was everyone's favorite part of this assignment. But first up we have the Florida fighting conch or Strombus alatus. And so they have blunt-knobbed whorls, and they are right-handed, as well as being found generally in central Florida coasts. But a fun fact is that they are carnivorous, and they mostly eat bivalves, which means that they would have found the rest of the shells that I'm going to talk about very delicious. So here we have the blood arc, or Lunarca ovalis, and so they have over 29 ribs that I can count, which are deep with a straight hinge line with grooves and a brown coloration on the upper side. And I think that it's likely a blood arc, but it could be just anything in the family Archidae. But they have hemoglobin that causes this clam's blood to be red, which is where it gets its name from. Here is the fragile Atlantic mactras, or the Macrotoma fragilis. And so this has a thin shell with an elongated shape and a cream color. And they are suspension feeders, which means that they strain tiny organisms like phytoplankton out of the water for their nutrition. Don't be too sad, but this is the last identification. So this is the Atlantic calico scallop, or Argopecten gibbus, and this was definitely the prettiest shell that I found. But it has a cream color with dark pink or red stripe coloration, and it has small ear projections on either side of the umbo, and they are found on all Florida coasts. And that's because they're very prolific. Their range goes from Maryland all the way down to Brazil. Thank you all so much for listening. These were the sources I used. And this was the music that I used for this video. Thank you!